This happened in west central Illinois. The first occurrence was about 6 months ago and at around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. It was during a late night thunderstorm and I was driving home from work, which is an hour commute for me. When I got to one of my exits, it was blocked off because a semi had jackknifed and slid into the ditch, blocking most of the lane. I pulled out my phone and had Google find a route around it, and it put me on this totally unfamiliar 2-lane road that wound through one of those wind farms that have giant turbines. Just for context, I have a bit of megalophobia, which is an irrational fear of very large things. Wind turbines are definitely on the list of things that freak me out because they're just so big. I didn't know this until I was there, but at night they blink red and sink, and there were miles of them I had to drive through. Even worse, it was during a thunderstorm. I remember seeing the first flash of lightning and it lit up the massive blades just for a second before everything went black again, and it almost made them look alive. It was extremely eerie and it just kind of put me on edge. I was about 20 miles from home when I was following the GPS and took a left turn. As I was just straightening out the wheel, a few bright flashes went off and I saw something in the air and moving next to one of the turbines. I only caught this for a split second, but it was black and every bit as big as the turbines. Really, the only detail I could get was that the outline of it looked sharp and angular. Other than that, I would guess it was 300 feet above the ground, right at the same height as the turbines. It was such a crazy thing to see that I wasn't even sure it had actually happened, so I pulled over and stopped on a gravel section at a cross street with my car facing right into the field. Then I just sat there waiting for the lightning to flash again. I didn't have to sit for more than a minute and the lightning hit again. That time I saw it perfectly, and after the second flash I was absolutely sure something was there. A third and longer burst of lightning flashed and it couldn't have been clearer. There was an object hovering a couple of 100 feet off the ground, right next to one of the turbines. The color of it was so dark it was impossible to see without the lightning, but it was there, and the shape of it was scary looking. It was enough to make me back my car up and take off. I really couldn't believe what I was seeing and I didn't want to be near it. As soon as I turned my car around and got moving again, all I could think about was putting as much distance between me and what I had seen as possible. My hands were actually sweating so much I had to wipe them on my shorts. What made it even scarier is the thunderstorm was still going, so every time I'd see lightning, I expected to see that shape behind me floating over the road or something. I just kept telling myself to drive. After a couple of miles, I reached for my phone again to get the GPS back up. I knew the general direction I needed to go, but I was so far out of my normal route that I wanted to make sure I didn't take a wrong road. When I tapped the screen, the Google homepage came up without anything. The map and the route I'd been on was just gone. I messed with it for a few seconds while driving, trying to see if it was in another open page, but the only thing open on my phone was Google, and it was just the main search bar. I hadn't even touched my phone since I set the new route after the blocked exit. To me, this sealed the deal, and I got a gut feeling I had just had an encounter with something. I tried not to panic and kept driving straight, figuring the farther away I got, the better. I'm sure I drove another 3 or 4 miles before finally using my phone again. Then I put in my address and it was working perfectly. Without any hesitation, the map and the route popped up like normal, and the voice started telling me which way to go. I should have been happy about that, but it bothered me even more. It was like something had cleared it out or made it shut off when I was parked on the side of the road, and now that I was away from it, everything seemed to work again. The idea of some large black shape in the sky messing with my phone threw me into a whole new level of fear. Obviously, I drove straight home and barely even remember the last part of the drive. I mostly remember pulling into my garage, then sitting in the car with my mind blown. I really couldn't process what had happened and I just wanted to go to bed. Later that week and back at work, I told a friend of mine the story because he knew that area way better than I did. Almost before I could say the word wind farm, he got this look on his face and cut me off. He kind of laughed under his breath and said, "Dude, my cousin and his wife had something happen there too." He told me they had been driving through the same spot and their car died. They hadn't seen any kind of object hovering, and this was on a clear night with no weather, but their car, which was only a year old, just died while they were actually driving it down the road. They ended up getting it towed into a shop, and the most insane part of the story was that the mechanic found nothing wrong with it. I guess as soon as he tried to start it up after hooking it up to the computer, it started fine and had no codes and no issues at all. Nothing was wrong with it. I know that's just an anecdotal story and the details of it were a lot different than mine, but it sure seems like something is going on out there. He was convinced that the area was haunted, like ghosts or paranormal stuff. I think he's wrong and that farm is being watched or visited by something not human. Maybe they're studying us and the primitive ways we harness energy and make power. I only know that something large was hovering out there, and it for damn sure wasn't anything made here. I can also tell you that after being out there, I have no desire to ever go anywhere near that place again. My name is Aaron and I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan. My story happened last summer when a pretty big group of us went down to South Haven for the weekend for my friend Jess's bachelorette party. Jess's family had rented her an unbelievable lakefront house on Lake Michigan. It was a huge place and right on the water with a private path that went down to the beach. I think they paid around $2,000 a night for it, so it was by far the nicest house I've ever been in. I took a day off work and drove down on a Friday morning. Also, this was in July, so the weather was incredibly nice. When I got there, everyone spent the afternoon on the beach, then we went around town getting dinner and drinks with the bride that night, mostly hanging out at a waterfront restaurant and bar. The second day was pretty much the same, where we were at the beach a lot that day, but that night we stayed at the house and had all kinds of food and an ungodly amount of wine and cocktails down on the beach under the stars. I think it was around 10 or 11 o'clock when we came back up to the house because we were going to watch a movie. We had all changed into matching pajamas that Jess's sister bought for us and then put on Father of the Bride. While everyone was huddled on a huge couch in the living room, I realized I had left my hoodie on one of the chairs down by the water and I wanted to wear it, so I ran down by myself to grab it before we started the movie. The path to the beach had these little solar lights down each side and the stars were out, so it wasn't totally dark. When I got onto the sand, I could hear the waves, but there was no wind and I remember it being very quiet. As soon as I got to the chairs, I leaned down to grab my hoodie, and then when I stood up, I saw something so odd that it's hard for me to give an accurate description of it. About 100 feet from the shore and another 100 feet up above the water, there was something in the air. From where I was standing on the beach, it looked like a giant metal church bell just sitting still in the middle of the open sky. When my eyes adjusted for a few seconds, I could see up into the inside of it from underneath, just like you could if it were an actual giant bell. The entire thing was dark, but it had the weirdest reflective surface on the outside of it. It wasn't shiny or glowing, it was just visible, and you could see other ambient light reflecting off of it. By no means was it invisible though, you couldn't miss it. If anyone else had been outside, they definitely would have seen it. I think because of the alcohol in me, I stayed pretty calm, just blankly staring at it, and for the life of me, I couldn't even guess what it was. I couldn't have looked at this thing for more than 30 seconds when I saw a line of green light reflect across the bottom of it horizontally, which then moved up the surface until it reached the top, and it was gone. Picture the green line that a laser level puts out on a wall, then imagine moving that line higher and higher. That's about as close as I can get to describing what it looked like. I actually started laughing because it was so incredibly unexpected. I'm sure being half drunk had something to do with that, but I didn't know what else to do. I looked up and down the beach hoping to see anyone else, maybe out walking or sitting on their deck, but it was a really private area and totally empty. When I stopped laughing, I kind of slowly walked back up to the house, turning around every few steps thinking I might see it again. Then when I got back inside, I did what anyone else would do and told the whole group they were not going to believe what I had just seen. I described the whole thing and mostly got laughs. My friend Kara jokingly told me I was cut off, which, fair enough. In the moment, I figured it had to have been something normal that only looks strange from my perspective, and I didn't bring it up again. Then we all just watched the movie. I know this all sounds a little lackluster so far, but that was all that happened at the house. I never saw anything else. We were there for one more night after that. Then on Monday morning, we packed up, said our goodbyes until the wedding, and I drove home. On my first night back at home, I was having a totally normal and random dream. I was dreaming of being with my sister in New York City, and we were doing something at a coffee shop. That's all I remember, but it was nothing important. Then, in the most unnatural way, that normal dream got interrupted and abruptly cut off, like a completely new dream had forced itself in. Instantly, I had this new view that was quite beautiful, and I was looking down at a beach at night. It felt like I was standing at a lookout, and I could see the waves rolling in and the sandy beach and the houses lined up along the shore with their lights on. Down below me on the beach, there was a circle and what looked like someone standing in it, but it was a little too far away to really see. That's where the dream ended. I woke up thinking about it for a minute and acknowledging I had never had a dream cut to another dream like that before, but I didn't give it any more attention than that. The very next night, the exact same thing happened again. I was having a normal dream about something. I don't even remember what it was. Then instantly and out of my control, I was back in that same place, looking down at the beach at night with the same view. I could see the houses with their lights on, and again I saw this dark circle on the sand and what looked like someone standing in it. The second time I noticed something though. I could see the houses a little better and I recognized them. It dawned on me that I was looking at the beach from our trip. I could actually see the rental house and the little lights down the path, and even this large beach umbrella at the house next door. It was exactly the same. I don't know why, but my attention was really drawn to this circle on the beach, and I remember trying to figure out what it was. In kind of a moment where you say, oh, of course, I realized that what I was looking at was obviously the beach chairs sitting in a circle just like we had had them. Then I realized something else that was a little more jarring. This person that I could see standing in the circle of chairs on the beach was me. I could actually see myself holding the hoodie that I'd walked out there to get, and I was looking directly back at myself. I don't know why seeing this hit me so hard, but it did, and I got a lot of weird feelings about it. I couldn't figure out why I was stuck in this dream, looking down at myself standing on the beach, and the me that was on the beach was standing there holding the hoodie and looking right back up. That probably sounds a little confusing, so I hope it makes sense. While still in the dream, I had an aha moment. Something clicked and I knew that the perspective I had was exactly what it would have looked like from the dark bell shape I saw during the party. The thought of that physically jolted me awake and I sat straight up in bed, totally creeped out. It woke my boyfriend up and he asked me what was wrong. I told him what I had seen on the beach since I hadn't said a word about it, and also what was happening in my dreams. I was so glad he was there because it gave me a really unsettling feeling. He ended up falling back asleep, but I stayed awake pulling his arm around me. This hijacking of my dreams kept happening that week, 4 or 5 times, and it didn't seem to matter what I was dreaming about. Whatever the dream was, it would cut into the middle of it and I'd be there again, staring at myself on the beach. I think it was the 5th or 6th night where it finally didn't happen, and I'll never forget the relief I felt, even though I do still worry about it coming back now, over a year later. It was really confusing and it still bothers me. Unfortunately, it kind of left a shadow over that weekend with my friends that should have been all fun and good memories. I don't know what happened to me, but the dreams were the worst part. I can't imagine what would cause me to dream about looking at myself from that perspective. And I don't know why it was always that moment when I had actually been on the beach and looking back up. A few years ago, I had an experience while horseback riding in the Shawnee National Forest that I can't explain. To start, I was with other people and we'd been camping and riding in that area for a few days. Also, all of this happened over a week's time. The first part of it was early in the week. On one of the first nights we were there, we had seen a cluster of what looked like meteorites or shooting stars, but they weren't normal ones. There were a few of them right in a row and they didn't look like they were going very fast. Additionally, 2 of the ones we saw had a silver tail or streak behind them, which seemed really abnormal to us, but someone in our group said it was just the atmosphere that was causing it to look like that. I don't know if that's true or not. A lot of us saw this happen, and we even talked to some people at another camp near us, and they saw it too. I couldn't tell you what caused them to look so much different than other shooting stars, but I wanted to add this in because of what happened later in the week. 2 days after that, my friend and I decided to go out early in the morning on the horses. We left from her family's camp and planned to ride one of the loop trails we'd been on before so we could get back before lunch. It was around 8 in the morning when we started, and her mom's German Shepherd mix came with us. He's an extremely athletic dog that loved tagging along. A couple of hours into the ride, we were deep in the forest. After following the creek for a while, we came to a brand new sign that we'd never seen before. It was marking a new trail that had just been established out there. We had heard a few people at camp talking about it, saying it was supposed to be a pretty tough one with steep rocky sections. The sign actually had the word caution on it in big letters, which didn't really make us want to try the new route. You could see that this new trail started by going up a steep hill, then we guessed it followed the bluff above us and went back toward all the camps. Our horses were a little older and we didn't want to push them too hard, so we decided to skip the new trail and stay on our original route. After that trail sign, we had gone on another 100 yards, and as we started to make our way around the base of a hill, the dog ran ahead and went straight through a patch of tall grass and out of sight. This was normal for him, and we knew he was just heading toward the creek crossing because he loved the water. When we caught up and got to the creek, we heard the most horrific sound echo through the trees. It sounded like an animal screaming in pain, and it was extremely loud. Our first thought, of course, was the dog got hurt, but a few seconds after that, he came bounding back out of the grass, perfectly fine but acting weird with his tail down. I know he heard it, and I think it put him on alert. After that, he stayed with us like he didn't want to get too far ahead. This screaming sound didn't stop either. It just kept happening like some poor creature was actually dying. I've worked with animals my whole life and currently volunteer at an animal shelter, so I've seen some pretty brutal injuries and heartbreaking things. This sound was bad even to me. I almost wanted to say it was a dog screaming in pain, but there was something different about it that didn't sound right. I don't know though. The echo could have been throwing me off. We could tell it was close to us, but couldn't figure out exactly where it was coming from. I remember looking up toward the bluff above us because that was our best guess, and it seemed to be coming from roughly where the new trail went. My friend started yelling up the hill, asking if anyone was there just in case, but we didn't get any reply. While we were making our way across the creek, we tried really hard to see up through the trees while still calling out and whistling. The screaming never stopped. We just kept hearing it again and again, and from the same direction every time. It seemed frustratingly close too, but we couldn't see anything. We got to an open area on the other side of the creek where we hoped to figure out what it was, then jumped off our horses, and I swear, the second our feet hit the ground, the screaming stopped. It was instant, like the actual sound of us jumping down made it stop. We also noticed that the woods went completely silent. This could have been because the screaming was going on for so long, but we couldn't hear a single bird or even an insect. There was nothing. Feeling on edge and a little vulnerable in the open, we got right back on our horses and kept riding, but we didn't say a word because we really wanted to hear it again and find whatever was hurt. I remember personally feeling a tension, almost like something was watching us. Even the dog seemed too afraid to get more than 20 feet from us. Just down from where we had gotten off the horses, there was an actual rest point on the trail, and we took a break. We sat by the water and wondered what we should do. I felt so heartbroken for whatever was suffering in the woods, and I really wanted to find out what kind of animal had been making that noise. After a quick discussion, and because of our mutual love and empathy for animals, we decided to go back to the sign and take the new trail because it had to have been where the screaming was coming from. We both agreed that it would be worth it if we could find whatever was injured on the bluff and help it, so that's what we did. The climb up was tough, but not as bad as I thought it would be. Then we got all the way up to the top and started calling and trying to get the animal to make noise again. The top portion of that trail followed the bluff way above the creek, and we knew it would eventually bring us back to where we'd started. We didn't go very far along the bluff and stopped to look down where we guessed it might be. While standing on the edge, we could look down and see exactly where we had been when we heard the screaming, so it seemed like we were in the right spot. We ended up searching around with the dog on foot. There was no broken brush or fur or tracks of any kind. We looked for maybe 15 or 20 minutes too. When we decided to leave and get back to camp, we were untying the horses. Then the dog went absolutely ballistic. Right when I looked up, I caught a glimpse of something so terrifying I can barely put it into words. Something ran out of the brush on one side of the trail, then crossed to the other side and disappeared into the trees. We looked at each other while the dog was still barking like crazy, and I felt overwhelmed with a real mortal fear. It was a blur when I think back, so all I remember is getting back on the horses as fast as humanly possible and leaving immediately. Whatever we saw was walking fully upright, and it was big. At the very least, the height of a large man, but without the weight. It was extremely thin and gangly, and the way it took steps over the trail was the scariest thing I've ever seen. Completely unhuman in every way. Some people are going to say that what we saw was a bear or even something wild like Bigfoot, but I can tell you if you would have seen it, you'd know it wasn't anything like either of those. Because I was in such shock, I didn't catch a single detail of its face or color or anything. All I can picture was the shape of it and the way it moved across the trail. The only thing I remember was climbing for my life back onto my horse and leaving at a breakneck speed. We rode for quite a while, but eventually slowed down when we were far away and headed straight to camp. When we finally got there, we explained everything to the whole group. They all took us dead seriously because of how shaken up we were, and 3 of the guys actually went back up the trail that afternoon with shotguns in tow to check it out. They didn't see or hear a thing. That trip is something I will never get out of my mind, even though I wish I could. The image of what we saw has haunted me ever since. In the few weeks after we got home, I really thought it was going to walk out of the shadows at my house. It seriously scared me. Never in my life have I taken stories about creatures in the woods seriously, and I always thought people were either mistaking an animal for something unknown, or maybe just wanting their 15 minutes of fame. This is one of those stories, and all I can say is that it is absolutely true and unexplainable. I want to thank everyone for watching another episode of Skywatcher Stories. If you like hearing these personal experiences of strange sightings and alien encounters, please subscribe because I upload new episodes every week and it really helps the channel. Until next time, keep watching the skies.